So welcome to Out of Bounds Cooking. I have the great pleasure today to be, now he doesn't call himself a chef, but I call him Chef Paul Kozak because he is one of the finest chefs that I know, but he is not a chef by trade. He's actually a chemical engineer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So a few weeks ago, we were going out for a dinner party, and we're going out for dinner, and we showed up at some friend's house, and of course, Paul's got to show up with an appetizer before we go out for dinner. So
I did ask permission for that.
You did. You cleared it with the host.
I couldn't help myself.
But we went into full production when we got there, and it was amazing. And then this is a really amazing dish. I wanted to share it with the Out of Bounds Cooking crowd, and it's really quite easy, but it has a story behind it. So I want Paul to tell us the story and kind of fill us in, and then he's going to take us step by step through this amazing recipe. And so Paul, first of all, tell us, just give a little introduction to yourself, just because
Well,
a lot of the viewers don't know you.
I have this coat on,
Yes.
and like you said, I'm not a chef. I kind of in some way wish I was. I'm not really deserving to wear it, but I haven't earned it from having any formal training, but I really like wearing it, and it has a special meaning to me because it comes from my brother Keith, who is a professional chef.
Yeah.
He works here in Vancouver at the Point Grey Golf Club. He's been a chef for 24 years, and he gave this to me in 1993 when I went home from Vancouver to Windsor, Ontario for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I've been wearing it off and on because I have friends and family and people around that we have very good times with food, and we all love to eat and we all love to drink wine. So
Well, that's true. And being a chef isn't about the diplomas on the wall, because it's all about passion, and you have passion oozing out your pores. So you're very passionate. You cook every day. It's besides your lovely wife, it's your main passion. Is that correct?
that's well said.
I had to throw that in there.
It's nice if someone else says it rather than you show an obsession. But if people say they have hobbies,
Yeah.
I love sports. I love tennis. I played some competitive hockey, but cooking is really, truly a passion for me, and I've been able to share that with my friends and have so many memories associated with that, and family. And
Well, I know your hockey career could be a whole show on its own. Maybe one day we'll
let's
talk
not go
about
there.
that, but
Okay.
we won't go
But
there
let's
for
let
today.
that go. I'm retired. Okay, let's
So-
let that go.
What are we doing today, Paul? Can you explain the name of this dish? And this is really, I'm excited because this is really an amazing dish. So what are you calling this?
I'm calling it Cajun fish nuggets. Now, to give you the whole idea of how this evolved to this point, I have to give the credit for the original concept to a few friends of mine, and I'm going to give you a bit of a story about that.
Okay.
So, I moved out here from Ontario to take a new engineering job in a battery factory, and I came out here in 1991, and I had some friends, the Bennett brothers, that were already out here, and their sister Tammy, that were starting a business that was doing the marketing and sales for developing business for fishing lodges along the west coast, including Vancouver Island all the way to the northmost tip.
The very west
It
coast.
is. And these fishing lodges, the fishing is incredible in the Queen Charlotte Islands. Now they call it the Haida Gwaii.
Well, that gives me a little chance to tell the viewers, because people watch from all over the world. So we're filming this today in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and you're talking about the west coast of British Columbia, Canada.
Yes.
Up into the Queen Charlotte's, which is now Haida Gwaii. We got to keep it correct.
That's correct. That's politically correct
Do
terminology.
you still call it Queen Charlotte's?
Sometimes people fall off the wagon and don't hold the consistency, but it's not meant out of disrespect in any way, for sure. But
Yeah, okay, sorry. Continue on with the story.
so they had the capability that they were asked when lodges expand, or they were trying to change the premise that they do an evaluation, for example, or some type of audit that they would go there on a trip that was, you know, comped by the lodges,
Sure. Yeah.
and they were allowed to bring guests. So I was incredibly fortunate to be invited on some of these trips. I
Yeah.
went for my first one in 1993, and they flew us in to some place from the Vancouver terminal to Sandspit, and then it went in another float plane, and it ended up in some other spot, and the place had no land-bearing support. And the fishing was great, but the story about this dish is that they had made these as an appetizer in one of the first meals that I had, and they called it halibut nuggets, Cajun halibut
Yes.
nuggets. And as you know, halibut is very coveted fish. Some people prefer it even more than salmon.
So off the west coast, we're dealing with salmon. Of course, there's the Chinook or the spring salmon. There's coho, but salmon is the big thing. But halibut is also huge on the west coast.
It's huge in terms of popularity. It's huge in terms of size.
Oh,
I have
yeah.
stories where friends caught
Massive.
160-pound halibut, larger than this table.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. There's been boats found floating with a halibut still in the boat, no fishermen. It has knocked them
It's
right.
very
out of the boat.
dangerous.
Yeah. So,
And they try to give you safety lessons about how to use the harpoons and everything. It's
yeah.
for somebody. The first time I went on, I was kind of scared, and the water's not calm. Sometimes the waves are
Well, there was
6, 8, 10 feet, and it's raining, and you can't see, and the fog comes in, and
there was this
sharks and
tragedy a couple weeks ago, right? A whale watching boat was just capsized, and people were killed. So yeah, it's dangerous. But this originally is what they call on the West Coast heli chunks, correct? Or heli nuggets.
the original theme that came from the lodges was called that.
Yeah.
So a group of friends that are all avid fishermen and connected include the Bennetts that I mentioned, Fred Perrin, who's a stuntman, who was good friends with Chris Bennett,
Yeah.
who also had lots of dinner parties and made this dish many times. Eric Barkley, who's an insurance agent and also was friends with Fred and Chris Bennett, and they worked when they were in high school in fishing lodges in the Campbell River during the summertime.
Okay.
So then they kept on the relationship and they kept on the fishing, and then in the 90s, as it went from 1992 or 93 until today, when we had these parties on occasion 3, 4, 5, 10 times a year, this dish commonly made it to the menu, and it was almost always done with halibut.
Okay.
But because halibut is so expensive,
It is expensive. It's a pricey fish.
I got the idea. I said, how can I sort of modify it? And everybody has their own trick. If these people make it, it's not all exactly identical. Nobody uses any notes.
Yeah.
There's no sheets that come out. There's no exact measurements. It's all by feel. It's not very complicated, but it can be if you want to make it that way.
Yeah.
So
What are we using today?
today we're using some wild Pacific cod. So I picked a fish that I knew that it just had enough firmness, not anywhere near what a halibut has, but it has to be in a situation where it's large enough that you can get a firm piece. So if we were using real halibut, you couldn't really tell the difference if I held the halibut and the cod up. So it took a long time for me to figure out this. I was never wasting time thinking I could use sole or rockfish or Pacific snapper or anything like that. But this is what I decided to use, and it's been working well. The first step is to season these, kind of like you might put a rub on ribs. So if we look at some spices, the key is to make sure that you don't put too much salt. Too much salt will ruin the recipe. So you can use a blend, same as you can for a rib rub, but you're fish related. I really like this Old Bay.
Old Bay is a standard for seafood, especially down in the southern states, and it's used in boils and
Cajun cuisine.
yeah, it's a staple. So okay,
And it's been around a long time, and
it
it's
has.
very valuable to me. If I was on an island and I only had one spice I could have, I would take that.
Well, that's good to know.
So I just showed a few things as an example. A little bit of cayenne pepper, depending on your tolerance for spice.
Yeah.
Some type of seasoning salt is good, or Cajun seasoning specifically. Highs makes both. I use a smoked paprika, garlic powder. You can sometimes use a herbal element. You could crush a little bit of tarragon or a little bit of dill, dried dill, and work that in. And then you end up with the first coating where these are all now set. And
So you dry rub those.
that's correct.
Yeah. And have you let them sit for a while, or is that something that you can do because the fish, the way fish is, you just can do that an hour before you're going to cook it, or do you let it sit overnight?
Not that long.
Okay.
1 to 4 hours before is usually the way, because if there tends to be a little bit of salt, it'll start to leach out the water, and then it'll be risky that you might make a product too dry. So anywhere between an hour and 2 hours you can see that there's no water extracted from the fish. So I was very careful about the salt content. Salt will come in some of these other coatings that go on.
Sure. So it's not drawing the moisture out.
Exactly right.
Now, people that are in other parts of the world, can you use any whitefish on this? Is this something that you can use? You can use tilapia, or if cod or halibut is not available, is this you can substitute?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you talk about the salmon. The largest salmon is the spring salmon, the king salmon, the Chinook salmon. So if you have a 20-pound salmon, you can get chunks of the size that you're looking for.
Yeah.
But you can use sea bass. It doesn't necessarily have to have the firmness, but it can't be a thin fish like a sole or something.
You
that's
need
thin.
you need the thickness of
You need a 1 or 3/4 inch by 2 inch kind of. It doesn't have to be perfect.
We're looking for chunks.
And sometimes people are okay if a thinner piece gets in the mix, it comes out a little crispier, it doesn't hurt anything, there's no problem with that.
Okay. Perfect. So now, you being a chemical engineer, has that played into how you approach your cooking?
A lot when it comes to sauces.
Yeah, because you are the sauce king, and I know that. That's your secret weapon, is your sauces.
Well, I appreciate that.
And I'm trying to get. I'm taking notes, and that's why I'm videotaping here tonight, because I can go back and check. I don't have to take notes. I can just watch the videos.
Okay.
Okay, continue on.
So let's take a simpler step. The fish is set, so we need another element as an egg wash.
Okay. So we're going to take these prepared chunks and we're going to move to the next step.